Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Festival of the Unexplained. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend so far. And I'm just going to bring my co-host on, Karen, and she's going to. We've got an amazing guest today. We want to speak to. She is renowned all over the world. She's done so many tours as well. Hello.
Hello.
And I'm just introducing our special guest who we've got now. She's done so many tours of the UK. She is a renowned psychic and she was Princess Diana's psychic as well. So we have none other than the amazing Sally Morgan, and I'm so excited for this.
Me too. I've seen her work, and they say you shouldn't meet your idols, but I'm meeting one again today.
We have a knack of doing that, don't we?
We do, yeah.
But yeah, let's bring her on and let's have a great chat with Sally, because, you know, we all love her and we all know from her stage shows that she loves to talk. So let's bring her in.
Oh.
Hello.
Hello, girls. That was a lovely intro. Thank you very much. I hope I live up to all of that. Oh, my goodness me.
You definitely do. I've seen you work on so many different occasions.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, does she ever breathe?
No, I don't. I ask myself that on a daily basis, you know, and I think that, you know, the power, you could say, of our voice and our inner voice, which hopefully I'm able to express daily when I'm talking to people. It never ceases to amaze me, you know, so thank you, girls.
No, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We've been very, very fortunate with the people that have given their time to us this weekend to help us with this amazing charity and to do what we're doing. And without all of you and your help, we wouldn't be able to put this together, and we wouldn't be able to do it, and we won't be able to help in the way that we are. So
it's an amazing charity. It's you know, for a very, very good cause.
It is. And like, you know, like most things, you know, the taboo subjects that we don't talk about are usually the ones that are the most harrowing. And, you know, suicide affects so many different people, from, you know, people thinking about it and just being depressed, but also those, you know, attempting it and actually come out the other side and live to tell that story and just use those stories to help other people. I just think it's, you know, it's a fantastic charity. And, you know, this is a free event that we're putting on this weekend. However, if you can donate anything, you know, we would be very, very grateful.
We would be.
Yeah, I think that when we talk about suicide, and, you know, unfortunately for me, with the work that I do, that I've been doing for many, many years, suicide is a situation that pops up, unfortunately, as I said, on a regular basis. You know, when you think about suicide and the fallout from that, which never ends, because, you know, for so many people, there are no answers, even if there's a letter left, or even if there are words or something has been said before the person actually does the act, that you never, ever get a sense of closure. I don't think, anyway, that the relatives don't. But if you look at it, I always look at suicide a bit like a tsunami. I always say that every single one of us, we've all had a wave of emotion where we have felt at one time or another, do you know what, I've had enough. It would be really good if I could go away and never come back. And we are lucky because the three of us are sitting here talking. So we've survived that wave. And then there are people that have a tsunami which just whoosh over them and wipes every, you could say, level thought, measured thought out of their head. And they're just on this mission. And, you know, I would say that every single suicide happens because of this tsunami in their mind. And it's very, very sad. So sad.
It is. And, you know, I think like most people, somebody somewhere will have lost somebody. And, you know, people have uncanny sense of blocking that out and of how they've passed. And, you know, like you say, they do have these, you know, these unanswered questions, and they do look to the people like us for those answers, you know. And unfortunately, sometimes, you know, it's like we always say, we can't, it's not like a telephone, is it? We can't just call up and say, can I speak to so-and-so, please? They have to want to come through, don't they?
I think that I, on a daily basis, I mean, at the moment, I'm not touring because all the theatres in the whole of the country, you know, that they're not allowed to be open. So I'm doing my work via social media, via basically technology, Zoom, you know, Skype, WhatsApp, FaceTime, and I'm still on a daily basis being bombarded in a way with suicide. And I think that the last 8 to 9 months, it's increased. I mean, you're the first people that I've spoken to about it, because, as you say, Jolene, we don't necessarily talk about the harrowing subjects that we are that basically are thrown at us, that we're given, that it's looked at as a problem by the person that comes to us, and it's thrown in our lap, and we have to somehow unravel this tangled ball of string. And there are no rhymes or reason to it. Suicide isn't because the person is weak or the person can't cope or the person is ashamed. Suicide, as far as I'm concerned, it's almost like the person is so unwell, you know, they're poorly, and they're not opening up for people around them, to people around them, so that those people can help. But at the end of the day, every single one of us, we pass, don't we? You know, there's going to come a time when we're not going to be here. And I think that with suicide, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just another way of that individual passing. That's how I would look at it. That's quite controversial. Not everyone would like me saying that, but that's how I look at it. I think that I have to come up with many answers to my work so that I can carry on. Otherwise, I would be swamped in my head. So it's not that I'm not caring. It's just that, you know, crumbs, this is happening every day, every hour of every day, to someone somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the stigma as well that's attached to it when they say it's basically it's cowardly and things like that. You know, a lot of people say to me, you know, cowards play out, but until you've been in that situation and until you've actually been through it and you understand the mental side of things, it's easy for people to say it's cowardly because they've not been in that situation clearly.
Well, I think that anyone that's lived a life, and there, you know, children take their life as well, which happened. I had a friend at school that took his own life. He was only 14. So that was the first time I'd ever heard suicide mentioned. But of course, when you look at religion as well, and I'm not going down that path today with this, but if you look at religion with suicide, there's a lot of you know, unnecessary things that are said about it, which is unfortunate. So for a lot of people, their faith is it's wrong to take your own life, and I just feel that suicide is an act that comes about because that person is literally has nowhere else in their mind to go.
It's madness, really, because those feelings that you have when you're doing things like that, it's kind of like
sorry about that.
It's okay.
I thought I'd turn that off, and obviously I had turned it off in the house and then came over here and I thought I'd turn that off and I've turned it on. That's the story of my life.
But I think with like you were saying about religion, you know, religion and exorcisms and things like that, they kind of they work on the knowledge that with mental health and things like that, then you obviously need to repent the devil, so to speak. And I think, you know, going back to religion, you know, they cast out all of these, you know, these spirits, so to speak, for mental health. But, you know, do you actually think that, you know, people are possessed by, you know, people who have mental health, basically? Do you think that they're possessed?
No, I don't. I
No.
think that people that have really serious, I mean, there is a difference. You can put schizophrenia, I think, into mental health, but that's actually an illness within the brain, and, you know, to do with all the different things, because our brain, we all know it's that big and we only use that much of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's an incredible part of our psyche is our brain. And I think that when you look at religion or following a faith or following you know, a group of people that feel that to reach enlightenment of whatever sort that might be for them, they have to follow their own set of rules. I'm fine by that. You know, if it's not hurting children or animals, then that's fine by me. But I do think that being possessed, I do think that there are people that can feel as if they have a demon in them. Do you know what I mean? And I do think that evil, the actual word and the meaning of it, is unfortunately nowadays used quite flippantly, because I do think there does exist with energy, a really dark energy, which hopefully
there has to be, though, doesn't there? Because without any of the darkness, there wouldn't be the light either. Would there? So you know, you've got to counterbalance that, and you've got to kind of, you know, sit back and think to yourself, you know, it's like all of the paranormal cases that we all deal with, though, as well. You know, I know, Sally, you do like to investigate the paranormal, because
I do. Although I'm terrified, I do. Although, you know, personally, I get really sort of like,
yeah. But including your own house, Sally.
Yeah, well, I don't no longer live in that house. No, I no longer live there. And we didn't move. That's not the reason we moved. It was just such a large property. It was an old vicarage, and right opposite, literally like 10 steps to the door of the church. So, and it once had, it no longer does have it there, but obviously the bodies are still there. It's got a little graveyard, because we lived in a village, so it was the village cemetery / graveyard.
Yeah.
So basically it was haunted, and I think that with any presence, energy, spirit energy that is left within a building or outside a building, or where anyone can pick it up, there's always that sense of, oh, you know, someone's just walked over my grave. So I think that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that energy is bad. And I really have, this is just personal to me, I'm always being asked to go and clear whatever that means, energy. I won't do that, because, you know, at the end of the day, that they're memories, and for one person that could be a memory. I could be saying to them, oh my goodness me, you know, I've got Mary here, what an amazing person, and literally feel her. And then someone else can come in and say, well, we never knew Mary, and I don't like that, and that means that Mary's energy is bad. Well, so I don't believe in necessarily clearing anything unless it is demonic, or unless it is incredibly mischievous, which, you know, you could put down as poltergeist. Then perhaps it's up to the person that lives there if they don't want it there. Me, I think they're entitled to be there as much as we are. That's me personally.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But like we was, you know, like on paranormal investigations, you know, when you have a private case to work with, you have to go in and you have to ask them, you know, are you taking any medication at the moment? And, you know, do you have any medical history that we need to be aware of? Because sometimes, you know, mental health and the tablets that people take sometimes have that hallucinogenic kind of to them and space them out and things like that. So, you know, things could happen to them that are side effects to the medication that they're currently taking.
Yeah, I think that a medication can, in a way, be hallucinogenic, as you said, and can really sort of open up that pathway within our brain where our imagination works overtime. But I also think that there are some medications like that you could almost say block our normal thoughts and do allow in spirit.
Yeah.
So I think that each case really needs to be looked at individually by a very good medium / psychic, and by some, you know, sort of medical that is in a way open to the possibility of energy living on when the body has disappeared. Do you know what I mean? So there is and you know, I'm just, as I'm talking to you, I'm just thinking in my head, this is one of the reasons I was asked yesterday. I did an interview yesterday for an American magazine, and I was asked about, you know, they said to me, what do you think of cynics and skeptics? And I said, well, they've done me a favor, because people asking me questions about my work, really, I have to come up with an answer. And therefore, I am learning more about my work by literally being asked about it. Do you understand what I mean? And I'm just sitting here now, we're talking about this, we're talking about, you know, demonic energy and the brain and medication and perhaps not medication. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, wow, you know, I sort of think I understand that now. So every day as a medium, I mean, it's probably not what this interview is about, but I'm sitting here thinking, I learned something today, which is brilliant, isn't it?
Well, it's true. They say you should learn something every day. And all being working mediums, the three of us, we all know that you are learning. You never stop learning. No. It doesn't matter how long you've done it for, you'll forever be learning. And no one can ever say they know everything, because you don't. No, there's always something new.
No, I think with going back to suicide, that's another thing, you see, that even if the person that has taken their own life leaves a letter or, you know, a message or something, and sometimes they leave videos now that we've got, you know, the ability to be able to do that, which is so sad. It's so sad. I think that the people left behind, the family, never ever feel as if they understand why, because they're not in that space in their head, and please God, they never will be. So suicide is an act that cannot be fathomed and worked out by people alive on earth plane, living their life, going about their ordinary things with their ups and downs. You can't work that out. It's we just have to accept that person was in a place that was so unreal for them, and they wanted to get out of in such a hurry. The only way they feel that they can get away from that is to end their life. It's very, very, it's so sad, isn't it?
And you've had personal experience, haven't you, of suicide? And back
well, I did. You know, I've been in this game a long time, and I say that because nowadays we have social media, which is brilliant, and this sort of like video calls and things. And there are a lot of people out there that think that they are psychic or mediums. And I think that I've been doing this a very, very long time. And really the first time that it was brought to my attention that I was doing stuff that maybe my girlfriend, the people I was at school with, weren't doing, was when I was about 11, 12. And at the same school, I really became quite friendly with a young boy there who now I realise was gay, but in the 60s you didn't have that terminology, and he just seemed to, we just hit it off, and you know, I made him laugh, and I'm not a person that judges, you see. I'm really lucky. I mean, listen, I work at that every day, so there might be people that say that I do, but I would hate to think that I did. And I didn't judge him, and he became a very, very good friend. And then one day we went to school, and the teachers obviously knew that we were like friends. We went everywhere together at school, and they pulled me aside and they said, I won't say his name, that he died, and he had a bicycle. And I remember the first thing I said was, oh, did he get knocked off his bike? And they went, no, we had a science block, which was like a bit like a static mobile home, and he'd done it in there. So that was the first time. And even now, look, at my age, I still remember it in great detail as if it happened yesterday. And that was the first time. And everyone, you know, other friends of mine at the school were saying, oh, it's suicide. And it's a bit like, what is suicide? And I remember asking my mum, what does this mean? And she said, oh, well, did he hang himself? He did, he hung himself. And I said, well, yeah, I think he did. He had a rope around his neck. And she said, well, he's done that. Because I was going, oh, is it murder? Is it murder? Just so it never ever been in my vocabulary in my life or anything.
It's amazing though, isn't it, how school kids understand that word though so early on. I mean, I was in high school, and there was a young man who was a couple of years above me actually, and he was probably one of the first kids who I knew who bought a car, and back in obviously the 80s, when in the 90s the cars they were able to, you were able to obviously commit suicide by using the carbon monoxide fumes. And this young gentleman, that is exactly what he did. And that is the first time I'd ever heard of somebody doing that. But then equally, a lady at the bottom of our street, she did exactly the same thing in her garage. And, I knew her daughter, and her daughter was only in high school at the time. And, going throughout life, you find people who've actually taken their own lives by different means. And I think probably one of the worst ones that I've ever heard is a gentleman left a note on the door to his daughter and said, please do not come in to this house, get the police. And that was a message left on the door. And apparently, this is just hearsay from other people, but apparently what he'd done is he'd kind of slit his wrist, but he'd taken the veins out and put them in a bowl. So the mindset that he must have been in at that point to do that, a massive form of psychosis, was just, it just beggars belief. It just, they become very, very determined, don't they? And you do get suicides that happen, and after I can get messages from people where they didn't think it would happen, and it was a bit like a cry for, I think every suicide, whether it works or whether it doesn't, is a cry for help, isn't it? And I think that's what we always say though, don't we? Like all these people who say, I feel really depressed, I feel this, I feel that is a huge cry for help, and that doesn't need to be ignored. And with COVID happening at the moment, the services just aren't there for people, are they? They're just not. Nobody can get the help that they need.
No, and you do find, that suicide, and I think this is well documented as well, but I've certainly find it with my work, there's a lot of men, young men, and there are certain communities where it can be more prevalent. In the traveling community, there are a lot of men that it can be to do with, I think, feelings that they're not man enough, or they haven't manned up, or they're not seen as being the head of the family. And the only way out for them, they feel, is they have to end it. They have to, as I say, disappear. Because I don't think you would find, if a suicide could go talk to you, come back and hit you, I don't think that they're literally saying, I want to die. I think the majority of them are, I want to get out of here. I don't want to be alive, which, to a reasonable, level-headed person means, well, you want to die. But I don't think that that's necessarily what they're thinking, I need to die. They are thinking, I need to vanish.
And escape.
I need to escape.
I need to escape the situation, and that's the way I'm going to escape it. I've known three people do it, and all three of them were all males, and all three of them did it in three different ways as well. Which is why we chose Calm, because that's obviously what they do. They are predominantly for men.
It's so sad. I'm always being asked by journalists and people that, like yourselves, what can we do to spot it or to stop it? Well, the only thing we can do is what you're doing now, which is encouraging people to talk.
And to highlight it, because all three people that I knew, not one of them did anyone have any sort of idea that they even had any problems or they were going through anything. It wasn't until they did the act, and obviously we all found out after, is when we realised there was a problem, because nobody knew, with all of them, nobody knew there was a problem.
And that's
they didn't know how to voice it.
That's the same with my friend. You know, it was on the outside looking at him, he was a biker, he was, you know, he was very well liked by everybody. He used to come into the pub and everybody loved him. And, you know, I wasn't even in the country when he did it. And it was kind of like, you know, how could you do that when so many people loved you? But underneath it all, you just don't know what's happening.
You don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on in someone else's mind. Yeah,
they're not even thinking about the person closest to them. They're in a void. They are literally, they're on a mission, and it's like nothing is coming through to them except this is a really good time now for me to escape and me to get away from whatever is their problem or their issue, which is totally blown out of all proportion. You know, for us sitting here, as I said, quite level-headed here today, talking about it, peace and quiet and being rational. It's not a rational act. It's an act that is, it's a form of desperation. So desperate that the three of us, we've never been in that position ever, because otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here. It's and I'm always asked on a regular basis, are they punished? Is their soul punished when they're not. Because they're poorly. It's like, it's the equivalent of somebody dying of cancer, you know, having a tumor somewhere and they're dying. They go to spirit and they are literally, they're loved and they're made well, and they're in a place of peace and love. And it's the same with people that take their own life. They are not punished. They do not go to hell. They are loved and nurtured and given a place of peace.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well.
Yeah, same. A lot of people don't realise that, and they just have this stupid, that's not stupid, but this idea, like you said, that
it's taboo, isn't it?
I suppose it's taboo, it's religion and everything else, depending what religion they are.
And it's
some
also,
religions, they believe it, don't they?
Well, it's what we grow up with. You know, when I lost this friend at school when I was 14, I had never had, so, and then of course my mother, who I could approach because she was very young and very modern, she was a bit of a hippie. And we're talking about the 60s here. And she was recounting the death of her mother's friend who was in a violent relationship. We're talking about now the 40s, the late 30s, the 40s and the 50s. And in those days, a lot of women committed suicide. I'm going to tell you how they did it. They literally gassed themselves with their head in the oven.
Oh my goodness.
Because gas then that was piped into your home was incredibly toxic, and I had all the bits and pieces in it we now have a different gas. And in those days you could smell gas. I mean, I remember growing up, you know, and going in the house and saying, oh, I can smell gas, someone's left the gas on. And that was the gas that if you put your head in the oven, that's how they would die. And my mother recounted. So suicide in those days and in the 60s and the 70s and even now, it was something that, oh, you know, don't tell anybody they committed. Don't you tell anybody how they died. That was what was said. It was a taboo. It was like, oh my goodness me, that is so bad to die like that. But of course we now realise it isn't. It's incredibly sad, because that person, if they had been able to talk about what was going on in their head, mental health, it's brilliant today that we can talk about mental health.
Yeah,
because you couldn't have years ago.
There's so much, there is so much, you know, there is so many people suffering from it at the moment as well. And I think COVID's just highlighted that, you know, throughout the past year, and obviously now being in lockdown yet again.
Isolation. It's isolation. And what it does is, for a lot of people, it's, you know, they're not, we've just done a big article for a magazine about mindfulness. Their mind is full. You know, we can be mindful and we can have our mind full. And literally people that are suffering from very serious mental health issues, their mind is full of overthinking, isn't it?
Yeah,
because that's all they've got. So they've got all their time on their hands. So they've got is time to think. I've been in isolation for how long now? 9-10 months. I think this month will be 10 months that I've been at home for and in isolation.
Well, Karen, you know, how lucky are you that you have a situation where you're able to almost, you could say, put in little boxes thoughts so that you're not overwhelmed by them. But of course, there are a lot of people out there that don't have anyone to talk to, and they're overwhelmed by their own thoughts.
And that's what's sad, is the loneliness. When the loneliness kicks in and you have nobody else to speak to, and they're on their own, and they don't, even though we've got social media and things like that, people think that they're not able to speak to people via social media, but like we always say, my inbox is always open if anybody.
Me too.
Me
too. And I think that, it does fall into, this is just how it is, certain categories, like people maybe that are over 50, 60, 70, 80, that don't have their partner any longer, their wife or their husband or whatever, and they're on their own, and their children have grown up, they live in, geographically, they can live in other countries even, and they're technophobic. I'm technophobic, and I live a very active life with technology, yet I'm still technophobic. Do you know what I mean? And it's so, imagine if you don't have anyone to help you. I'm lucky, like you two, you've got people around you that help you, your team. I have that. But imagine not having that, not having your partner, being in a house that you think, oh, I'm not going to put the lights on, it's only me. Or do I really need the heating on in all the rooms? So you might be warm in your little room, but you walk out to put the kettle on or something, you think, oh, I won't put the kettle on, it's too cold. All of a sudden, you are putting massive obstacles in your way of having, you could say, a balanced lifestyle. And it's very sad, because very quickly our mental health can do that. Can dip. So by one thought in our head.
And it's sad though nowadays, because back in the 70s and the 80s, people used to know who their neighbors were, and obviously lockdown, so nobody can spend any time in anybody's houses, but you could have that conversation over the fence and over the privet hedge, like my mum used to do.
We used to do it. They used to talk to the neighbours. Ago. Still do now. My mum still does.
Well, I used to talk to my neighbours when my girls were little. They'd be putting the washing out. You had washing lines then. It's another thing. And you'd be hanging the washing out, and I'd be talking to Lynn next door, and that was every day we would do that. We'd find ourselves, she'd be putting her nappies out and I'd be putting my nappies out. So it was a bit like, it's a different way. I mean, I'm not saying it's better and I'm not saying it's worse, but I just think that community spirit, we need to somehow find that with the technology. We need to find that. There needs to be more sites where you can easily get into, or we need to be able to let the people that are alone at home access this and talk to one another. And where it's maybe 5 easy steps: press this button, press that button, click this, click that, and they can speak to someone.
It's because I think, not mentioning brands, but there's a high street bank out there who, publicly portray, people speaking to the elder generation and saying, we're trying to combat loneliness and we're trying to combat this, but loneliness goes hand in hand with mental health, goes hand in hand with suicide. Everything has a knock-on effect, and I don't think people realize that, do they?
No, they don't. And I think that the older generation, they can be over nervous. Like at the moment we are in lockdown, but we're allowed to go for a walk. But you and I, we could speak to somebody now that's in their 70s or 80s, and they go, oh no, you can't go for a walk, we're in lockdown, we can't. So they need, because they're not around younger people that are giving them the truth that what they can do. So it's a really, basically, at the end of the day, people that are lonely, that have mental health issues, that are having difficulties there, they need contact with other people. That is as simple as that. It's as simple as that.
So you've been touring the UK, Sally.
I have.
Lockdown, and we talk about lockdown an awful lot, and I've been lucky enough to come and visit you on a couple of occasions at your tour, on a couple of your shows. But how has COVID affected you and your team?
Well, it's completely. I mean, I was working one day in March 2020 last year, and then literally got in the car, left the theatre. Everyone was happy, happy, happy. The crew, see you tomorrow. And we got a phone call, and it was like, oh, tomorrow. Can't even remember which theatre it was. They've closed. They made a decision that, and it was like, oh, that'd be okay. Okay, we understand that. And then it was. Then the following morning, was on to all my book, because there's a lot that goes into a tour. You two understand that. And everybody was, because there's many people that earn their living from a tour, so there's lots of different sort of arms that have to come together. If you want a successful tour, it's just not really because of you, it's because of how people put it together as well. And it just stopped like that. So I was left, first of all, we were thinking, oh, a month, we'll be back on tour in a month. So I was saying to John and the family, oh, we'll have a little bit of a break. Let's go to Cornwall for a week, or let's do this, or let's do that, have a holiday. And then literally within days, it became very obvious that this was going to be it was 3 months, and then it was 4 months, 5. And then all of a sudden it was like my booker was saying, do you know what? We've got to look at 2021. And now we're in 2021. Well, really, the end of last year, September, he was saying we're looking at 2022.
My goodness.
Wow.
So this has had a massive, profound effect on everybody, especially like the hospitality, the events industry, and everything like that.
I've got lots of friends. When you tour, especially the provinces, because theatres are run privately by charities, volunteers, and then the local council. And I got to meet, and I've become friends with a lot of artists in other areas, comedians, pantomime, plays, and all things like that. And they're all out of work. It's crazy. The arts have they've imploded.
They seem to have been forgotten about as well, though, haven't they? Well,
it's the last thing, isn't it, really? When you look at what everything is needed at a time like this is an unprecedented situation. This is we've never, anyone alive today has never ever experienced what we're experiencing now. And I think that the arts have to be one of the last areas that are considered necessary. Yes, we're lucky we've got TV and radio, and they can repeat things, and you can get somebody in a studio at home and things like that. But I do feel that it will come back. I know it will come back. But a little prediction, little Sally Morgan prediction for you out there, everyone. I said last year that it's a 5-year situation that we're going to find out. So I do think that by 2022, touring will start again for a lot of people. But you see, for something that I do, I need to communicate with my audience. It's interactive. So to have masks on and to pass a microphone around, there are real challenges there.
Yeah.
So I might be looking at people that do work like myself might find ourselves doing it a bit longer. But listen, what it does is I try to look at things so positively. It's made me look at technology and my team, and there are ways of doing, like we're sitting here now, the three of us, we should be in a room together. It's just like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that for me, putting a show on, you could say, my tour will be virtual. That I've no doubt about that. Yeah, there's lots of challenges for that as well, I have to tell you. Well, it's too heavy and too deep to get into, but a lot of challenges because, I could do it for 1,000 people like I do 1,000 people in a theatre, but it's actually, getting the team of people behind that to make that work and to have screens in front of me that enable me. It's a huge situation.
Yeah. I couldn't even imagine that after coming and seeing you on more than one occasion, say like Cheltenham Town Hall. I've seen you a couple of times there over the years, and that's such a big place, and the way the audience is all set out. I couldn't even imagine how you'd begin with the amount of people that come.
That's it.
Begin to try and do that in a virtual way. It's beyond me. It just sounds.
And when you're in an actual live theatre, no matter how big the venue is, there is an atmosphere. You understand, girls, that an atmosphere is an energy, and there is an energy, even if you've got, you know, which I know that I always do have. You have cynics and skeptics in there, but there's still that energy, you know. And I wonder if you can ever replicate that through a screen. I don't know. It's something that maybe if my team can get. If we can sort of overcome the challenges, maybe try it. But I don't know. It's I am personally just waiting to go back to the theatres.
Yeah, and plus when you're working a theatre like that as well, though, it kind of Spirit gives you little markers, though, don't they, as where you're going to go, and it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know about you personally, Sally, but I get like this little, you know, I'll look out somewhere and I'll be like, oh, I'm coming to you, and it's like, I don't know why, but it's Spirit just give you those little markers, don't they?
Oh, they do.
It's like a light bulb moment, isn't it?
It is a light bulb moment.
I call it my light bulb moment when I've done. So when I've done it,
but
like
it's sad, but at the same time, this is sometimes I'm just so too positive. But it's like it's something to look forward to. I'm looking forward to going back on tour, and it will happen one day, but it's not going to be yet. So at the moment, I'm sticking to Skype and Zoom, FaceTime, WhatsApp, and StreamYard. I love StreamYard.
It's great, isn't it? It's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, we do an awful lot on StreamYard, but also Live Pigeon as well, which is great because you can, you know, you can reach people during the middle of the night when, you know, these people are wide awake and things like that. So it's the concept is there. It's massive. You know, the technology that's out there to stream for social media is huge. And I think we've just kind of people are in the background developing more ways of how to engage in people as well.
Oh yeah, because there will be people that have always gone out to work who will never ever do that again. People love working from home. Why shouldn't they? Yeah. And I think that, you know, they're spending not just their time and some money on it, but they're converting spare bedrooms into an office. They're putting offices in their garden, and it's like, this is brilliant. And, you know, there isn't a stigma anymore from working from home. I think that, you know, before we had lockdown and COVID, working from home was seen, oh, yeah, well, she's got kids, or, you know, it was always her. But now the fathers are loving working from home because, you know, they can, at the lunchtime, go into the other room and get on their running machine, or, you know, it's like the advantages of working from home are immense, and so we're discovering new ways of earning our living and how we can interact, and I don't think there's anything wrong in that.
Well, I think companies though now are taking a positive spin on it, aren't they? Because they're not spending the overheads in, you know, heating buildings and lighting the buildings, but they're getting people who are working from home. Their productivity is even higher.
Definitely.
In an environment that they're used to, and people building these office gardens and these, you know, these converting their bedrooms, it's sometimes I think it's because people like to feel that they're actually going into a separate room and not having to look at the washing up in the morning when
definitely
breakfast and things like that. So, you know, like you know, I work from home anyway full time. My partner's been working from home since June of last year, and, you know, he says I can't see me going back.
No, I don't think, unless you're like a key worker, or unless your work is something you have to be I think that people are just going to say, well, I'm going to carry on working from home. I mean, why not?
We just want to say thank you so much, Sally, for taking the time out to speak to us as well. It's been brilliant. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're